Mr. Jones, welcome to Explorations in Black Leadership.
Great honor to be here.
It's a pleasure having you here. I want to begin with a question that begins at a time when you were 2 years old and may be difficult for you to answer in a factual way, but it's part of this program. What did the Brown v. Board of Education mean to you when it was first decided in 1954? I understand that you didn't read it in the paper then.
But interestingly enough, maybe it's not quite Brown. I'm thinking of more Little Rock or those places. I remember being a small child who had not yet learned how to read. I don't think I knew how to read. And with my father, which was odd because he was a working man with many children, one day, was it a Saturday morning, and there was a road map of the states, and I had learned a few words. Now this is, like I say, it's not Brown, but it's related. What a small child could, this is probably a 4-year-old child, and I had learned Little Rock. And he was so proud of me that I knew that I could see that word, Little Rock, but it was also what I'd seen on television about civil rights. Now, Brown versus the Board of Education, it was only when at age 12, having been living in Wayland, New York, in Steuben County, German, Italian community, that one of the people from the old days, when my dad was a migrant contractor, young man came through our town heading south, and he wanted somebody to go with him to keep him awake. So Estella says, well, Billy, he talks a lot, so she sent me off like that. One afternoon, no clothes, nothing, and the whole way down reading signs, just reading, because I was an avid reader. And then for the first time seeing a coloreds only in my life. It was something I'd heard about, but I'd never known. We pulled up to a gas station, and he said, your bathroom's around the back. And I saw there was a bathroom right there. I went around to the back, and it was locked, and it was filthy. And he said, well, man, you got to go in the woods. Like that, So these are all this is my response, is Jim Crow stories from the point of view of a young second generation black person who didn't really understand what was going on until I was back down in the South. I'd always never had any tension around going to integrated schools. Thank God. My dad wanted to become a black Yankee in 1955. I'm born in 52. And so I went K through 12 with the same kids all the time. It was an exotic idea, but maybe a little bit more than that, because there was a kind of an anger and a sullen hardness that sort of came over my parents' countenance when they talked about my experience of going to school. And I never understood what that was. Now, was it a kind of envy? What was it that they, like, there's something you don't know? As my friends from age 2, 3, 4, 5 were like little white kids. They were the kids that my parents were working for. I went to the school, I graduated there. In the 60s, I dropped out like they were dropping out, or so I thought. How do you drop out if you're on welfare? But they were middle-class kids, and everyone was like living the counterculture. But there was something my parents in their faces about segregation, something I didn't know, and they didn't have the language to tell me.
Did they ever develop the language to tell you? Did you ever find out what it was?
Oh yes, Oh yeah, I definitely found out what it was. I mean, that trip that I expressed to you, I was outraged by it. And by the same token, I couldn't understand why any of the people we went south to visit want to still live in the South. And even to this day, I've been sort of mining very uncomfortable feelings about things that I have not resolved in myself about the history of our brand of apartheid. I found out about them, but I've spent my whole life dancing in another sphere. Maybe that's what the artist's life has been. It is so painful, the world that I came out of, that in the 60s when they said, you are not your body, hallelujah, I'm not my body. You can be whoever you want to do. Hallelujah, I can be. And that was pretty good for a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old.
But as you found out what the Brown decision was, did you believe that the promise of it would bring great things for you, that it would change your life in a positive way? Were you understanding that this held out hope that things would be different?
Well, like I say, it was the water I swam in. For me to say I had a revelation, it was just the way things are. I'm sure you see it now with young folks here who have grown up in the era of the internet.
Right.
They don't know anything before it. They know about it, but they can't know it. You know, it's impossible for them to know it. I do know that I am grateful for my parents' ire, for my parents' pride in a way, and why had my dad wanted to be a black Yankee? What was wrong with being a black Southerner? And they tried to explain it in terms of things like the Civil War was taught in the South, as if it had been won by the South. They tried to talk about the shoddy books that, well, my older brothers and sisters had books that were handed down from the white schools. They wanted us to have all the opportunities of the white kids. What was this all about? We just knew that there was something different between whites and blacks, but I went to school every day with whites. I was the only black in the class. So what's the big deal? There was a mixed message that I think in some ways I'm still trying to understand in my heart today.
But did you come to understand a portion of it?
Oh, yes.
Sure.
Well, what do you mean, do I understand?
As you're going to school with these kids and you know you're black, they're white, did it become clear to you that there were distinctions among you, between you?
I knew it very well.
And what did those mean to you?
What did they mean?
The distinctions mean to you?
At that time?
Yes. And later?
Well, yeah, no, you'll have to excuse me. I'm an artist, so I speak in anecdotes and
Sure.
feelings and impressions. What did it mean when the first grade teacher, as we were filing out at Christmas time, what did it mean that she took a big orange and put it into my hand and said, "And Bill, you have a very special Christmas"? What did it mean that Charlotte McLaughlin, the choir teacher, with her sensible shoes and her ladylike, somewhat Victorian manner, what did it mean when she was coaching me one day for a vocal competition about my diction? Your people, if they want to be equal, they must be equal in all ways, and they must be better, she said. Okay, did she say that to Susan Schultheis, my young German American friend? Did she say that to Scott Kilborn, the people who were my classmates in kindergarten? Oh, no. She was saying it to me. Yeah, what did it mean when the prom came around? And we've grown up together since kindergarten, but suddenly now you're sexual beings. And who is going to go to the prom with you? It's never been a problem. It becomes a problem. Word gets out in the community that this person you've gone to school with since you were 5 suddenly has been asked to go to the prom with you. And her parents have come in and said, "We ain't racist, but we can't allow this to happen." Oh, I understood. But I understood in the way that a young person understands, you know. I wanted my privileges. I wanted, quote, a normal life. But there were some things that were not normal. There was something abnormal about my dad moving us into this environment. Even though we were in the free Yankee North, there were differences.
Now, who are the people who were most significant in helping you develop your talents? Your parents, I'm sure, but your parents and whom else? Who around you as you're growing up make you aware of talents you have that might flourish?
Mary Lee Shapey.
Who is she?
She was in the flush years of Camelot, maybe a little before. Our school system had money to bring in a drama instructor, speech and drama instructor. This is a small country school. Those must have been good times. And she was an outlandish kind of person, very sophisticated, very sardonic. She wore miniskirts. Everybody in the community, she wore miniskirts. She said she hated television. She said, I don't need someone to tell me how to wash my toilet bowl. She spoke of things like people being stupid and mediocre, and she called me by my last name. Jones be wheels, she said, when I was constantly showing off like the little black boy in the class who wanted to be loved. She said, cut the crap. She's the one who talked to me the day after the Martin Luther King's speech had been, well, actually, it was not that speech. I think it's probably Selma or someplace like that, and asking me, what do you think it means to hear everyone to hear him speak like that, and the people in the church saying amen, talking out loud like that. And then she explained to me the difference in oration, what bathos was. That this speech, the March on Washington, was the pinnacle of bathos, and that it was different than purely intellectual reasoning. It was appealing to an emotional response in a group. And my ears were perking up to all this value system that she was trying to talk to me. And I am, I'm one of her students. I just love to hang out with her. But she really would talk to me, and she had her blind spots. But she actually knew that something was happening, and she wanted to know what I was thinking about it.
And others, as you grow older, go away to college or go to college?
Well, I've written a book about it, so some of them are a bit well-worn as stories. Of course, there was...
They're new to us.
Yes. There was a person like Percival Board, who was the husband, gorgeous, tall Trinidadian dancer with the husband of the great Pearl Primus. And he was teaching West African and Caribbean dance. And he actually showed me an example of what a black male body moving could be like, in quote, and here I use the word quotes, in a natural way. It was not Sammy Davis Jr. in the Rat Pack. It was not the Nicholas Brothers. It was not Duke Ellington. It was not Chubby Checker. Here was a man who, as I talk about in my book, when he raised his arms and he did what we call the Watusi study, or he showed us the Dembala study with his kind of acerbic comments about it, and how to hold these ritual sticks as the Watusis did. And it will take you 10 years to understand how to even hold these sticks, but we'll do our best, he said. He was embodying. I thought, that's what this chest is. That's what these arms are. That's what these legs are. That's what this syncopation I'm hearing all the time is. And I was able to see past popular culture through him. That was a very important one. The others later on become important in other ways. Merce Cunningham is the choreography free of psychology and social location. Martha Graham in her own way, choreography rooted in the psychoanalytical analysis of experience as Carl Jung might have understood it. All of these things. The avant-garde of the 60s, non-narrative film, non-narrative. What does it mean that art is purely about perception? It's not about some symbol of something else, that it could be its own thing. Paint dripping down a canvas, Jackson Pollock, all of those things. Why is it beautiful that gravity, isn't that sloppy, that paint is allowed to drip down? No, it is evidence of an essential elemental event. Can you find that in your body? What is gravity? What is the weight of an arm? What does it mean? What is space around us? All these things helped extend what I understood art to be.
Now, something more mundane. Were you ever in a leadership position in high school and in college, student government, that sort of thing?
Yes, I was. I'll give you two contrasting examples. One, the same Mary Lee Shapey, our drama teacher, there had been problems. I think this is the order of things. We had done The Music Man, the Buddy Hackett part, the kind of the clown was given me. Buddy Hackett is supposed to have a girlfriend at the dance, but once again, in this community the only community I had known, suddenly on stage to be a girlfriend would be too much of a statement. So I had to dance a solo. Hey, you know, the showman inside of me loved it. The other one knew there was something weird about this. So she just allowed me to make it up. And I made it up. The whole community came to its feet applauding, but why was I dancing alone? That's another issue. I think she tried to circumvent that. The next project was going to be the Arthur Miller's The Crucible. She let me direct it. And this is, I'm 17. Now she was there with me, but I don't know what there was. I don't know if this was, somehow she was rewarding me or she was heading off something. And then there was the walkout, because the issues of the 60s had come to our little town and girls wanted the right to wear pants and they were not allowed them. So we organized, I organized a spontaneous walkout. It was a cold December morning, and then we're all outside chanting as we had seen on television, the way you're supposed to protest and so on. And I became this face of it. The state troopers came to the high school to examine my locker. The principal, decent man, Mr. Hurlbert, called me into his office and asking me, did I know what I was doing? I said, you know, there's a revolution happening in this country. The revolution, right? Girls should wear pants. Well, a revolution happened. He said, lower your voice. I said, are you trying to suppress my freedom of speech? And he said, Buster, you don't know what you're talking about, and you should just, you know, I don't remember it, but he threatened to call my mother in, and he did call my mother in. And this is where I understood something about Estella, because when he called her in, all she could think about was those white people and her boy.
Right.
And she spoke in that language. Just because my faith, now this is, you have to realize, this is a very proper, and if they're listening to this anywhere, because I often sound like I'm beating up on my small town, but when Estella at 200 plus pounds, wearing her leopard skin coat, right, and a hat this big and a giant purse, when she came in there, they would move like this because she was going to raise hell. Because it was always, now I've seen this, the negative as well, we know the problems with urban youth and maybe mothers or fathers who excuse their children's behavior because of racism. But she would, anytime they called her in, she knew it was a plot. White people trying to get her boy, lynching, all of that. Yeah, those events were seminal events. It didn't take much for me to become a leader because I felt I was performing being outrageous. And talking to Mr. Hurlbert, man to man like this, he was a good man. He definitely deserved more respect, but suddenly it became black and white for me. It was not about him being this father figure anymore.
Do you remember specific events, historical events, that passed by as you're growing up, as you're in lower school, high school, then in college, things that impacted on you?
Yeah, like everybody, I remember exactly the moment when John Kennedy was shot. I remember Marilyn Monroe's death. I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. There's a work in our repertory called Monkey Run Road, which is trying to talk about the afternoon. My brothers and I were home alone, and we heard that Armageddon was about to happen. The world was going to go up in flames. I remember those things very well.
Yeah, and they had an impression on you.
Oh yes, they did.
Yeah. Each different, I imagine, from the other. Why was Marilyn Monroe's death so striking?
That the great, the glamorous, the goddesses and gods among us could die, and they could die horrible, lonely deaths. And that, that was a lot. Right there, there was no escape from this thing, which we call life and its circumstances.
That even she could.
Even she could. Yeah, even she could. Yeah, and I loved her, of course, like many people, but I can't say she was the most important star in my in my heavens. But she was important. She was important. Sidney Poitier, for instance, you know. What he meant when last year at the Kennedy Center, when my sisters were there with me, and there was a thing that happened in us. And I never met him all these years. Maybe once I did dinner with Alvin Ailey years ago, but there was something when he was introduced to us that it was emotional in a way that we all talked about later that was very exciting. It was more than exciting.
Yeah.
You know, what was that when he did, what was that film he made, not Band of Angels, but the one where he's the handyman for the nuns?
Yes, I know what I don't know the name, but
You
I
know
what
I
you
mean?
mean, yeah.
But that was the official face. That was the face that we identified with. Intelligent, decent. Sexuality had to be controlled. Muted.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I once in the 70s, I was going to make a solo, which is called I Am Not Sidney Poitier. That was the first time I thought of doing I Have a Dream speech backwards, which I did later do in a piece called Last Supper at Uncle Tom's Cabin. But I am not Sidney Poitier. But meeting him, in answer to your question, he was an event.
Yeah.
He was an event in the cultural sphere that said something about possibility and so on. Now, what about Malcolm? What about Martin Luther King? So Martin Luther King was killed in '68. I was in 11th grade. I remember in Mrs. Shapey in the public speaking class, we could take any position and argue it. And I thought I was just being provocative, and I made a speech. She said, well, make a speech with a position. And I was saying, I was trying to speak, imagining what it would be like to be Malcolm X, and trying to skewer him, which in a room full of young white German Italian kids, and didn't even understand what the Uncle Tom and all of that, you know. But by the same token, when the questions came back from the group, some of them were really hard right-wing questions. I remember one guy, Charlie, I won't say his last name, who was a friend of mine, said, you know, if you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. And that's what happened to this king. What? You know? Didn't have the language, but I was incensed.
Yeah.
And it became, that little exercise in drama club suddenly became very real. Charlie, you feel that way? He's a communist, and I thought, oh, this is where I live. That was, I mean, every artist, every person goes through that, but suddenly the world around you changes. I've known these kids since we were practically in diapers. And now I hear attitudes that I know around my house are totally different. And I became very vehement. And then, as we used to say, and I'm sure you remember that, and before it was black, I used to say, you got colored?
Yes.
I got colored in that room. I'm the only one, and I'm a favorite. You know, everyone loves Jones. You know, but suddenly Jones is speaking the language of his mother. Suddenly he is talking about you and us. It's me in the room, and Mrs. Shapey was watching it bemused, but also she realized what had been let out of the bottle, and she saw what it was doing, and she cut the exercise. You know. A very important moment when the world came into that little classroom. And I think that sort of started a trajectory of what I thought art and public appearances, a public voice was.
It's a great segue here. So how did you decide on your career? What made you think, I'll do this?
Well, unfortunately, I had too much freedom and not nearly enough resources. It was a time when you could, my mother and father were just glad that I had graduated from high school and I'd been accepted to 2 schools. Wow. They didn't have the money to send me, but there were programs.
Right.
So I go off to the one at State University of New York at Binghamton with the idea that I'm going to run track and go to Broadway. What did I know? I'd done drama club in high school, had won awards, and like I said, the community.
But you knew you wanted to be a Broadway dancer.
Oh, I don't know what it was. I knew I wanted to perform and be fabulous.
Okay.
You know, what do young people
But you were thinking of Broadway, not...
What else was there?
Yeah.
There was nothing else to think about. There was rumors that there was a tap dance class in the next town over, 10 miles. My parents were potato pickers. In the evening, you know, talk about soccer moms. No, no, they're coming from 30, 40 miles away, dead tired after having been up to here in potato muck all day, or they're tired. No, you got to get yourself to those classes, and then you got to get back out into our house, which is also 10 miles out in the woods and up a hill and down a valley. So you got to do all that. It was beyond me, so I didn't do it. My way of thinking was drama club brought all of that. I went to school with the idea of what I'd learned in drama club, which was doing Broadway shows. And it was only there that I began to take African dance classes when my niece said, come and check out these classes. My coach, little did he know, let me go. I was a pretty good runner, I was a sprinter. And he said, okay, as long as you're working on your cardiovascular system, it's okay. That was very open-minded, wasn't it? But it was the time, you know, it was 1970. And I go to the class, and the door opens, and that acrid smell of sweat and the drums. I was hooked, and that led to modern dance and so on. We didn't think of careers, because you have to realize there was also the workings of the counterculture, which said, don't fall into a straight job. Well, that's when straight meant something other than your sexual orientation, right? Don't fall into a straight job, because the cool people don't have jobs. The cool people, you know, live on farms or just hitchhike from one commune to another, the cool people. Now, does it matter that your parents are on welfare? That your older brother looks at you and says, man, if you knew what I knew, you wouldn't be messing around with this art stuff. You'd be trying to make some money. And I just thought that he was a straight, uptight dude that didn't know what he was talking about. Well, going into those classes was a way of the art world bringing you in. Because I fell in love with my sweat. And there's a different kind of sweat from the athletics field. There is no apparent opponent. The opponent is you. The opponent is the history of your art form. The opponent is seeing the person next to you at the ballet bar, who is a young woman who's been studying ballet since she was 5 or 6. Now her leg goes up, 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 and even higher, and your legs bound like an athlete's or runner's legs, like someone who picks potatoes, and a normal person's legs can barely get them up, but I have this desire to dance inside of me. And where will you dance? Well, as Linda Grandy, who was the teacher at that time, who really didn't like me very much because I was much too showy in a room with only 2 or 3 guys in the first place. I always wanted to be seen. And she said, well, you know, you need more technique, and maybe you should check out she didn't say check out, maybe you should go to the Graham School. The Graham technique is what's the word? Accommodating to black bodies. Accommodating to black bodies. And of course, there's Mr. Alvin Ailey. Yeah. Those were my options, right? Never mind Merce Cunningham, never mind ballet, never mind anything, but that is what they were advising me to do. Now, of course, I did neither. I joined the dance collective, an avant-garde dance collective that said, you can make up your own style of movement. You don't have to have your leg in the air. It's about your ideas. It's about something mastering space like a visual artist does. And I just sort of went that way. Was there defiance in it? I think there was. And my companion was one of those precious, I call them magical creatures, a bona fide alienated person. Alienated, he was Jewish, Italian, small man, and he was gay.
And you're talking about Arnie Zane.
This is Arnie Zane.
And he's not a dancer.
He was not. He had taken his degree, and he did have a degree in art history and biology. I think he had finished school in 2 years. He'd done all the requisite courses. Really bright guy, but
And he's a photographer, really.
he was, at that time, he was flirting with it. He met me, and he was just trying to do, first of all, he wanted to be in love. That was most important. And he wanted a partner that he could be passionate about. And that I became that partner. And then, what are we going to do? Life was a great adventure. Well, let's try a little photography. Let's try a little dance. Let's travel to Europe. Let's do this. Well, I'm 19 and he's 21. What are we doing? But he gave me a passport that I don't know if a lot of young African American people had in traveling with a young white man like that. Oh, let's take a trip to Europe. Well, yeah, let's take a trip to Europe. You know, I don't know if I would have done that without him. And I'm sort of, this is what I do. You have to rein me in now. The discourse
That's okay.
now is becoming a little unfocused. What?
But I wonder, what, besides romantic, what did the relationship mean to you?
Oh, big question, huh? Well, what did the relationship mean to you? Now, I'm going to jump here. A few years ago, the Smithsonian did a dinner with civil rights leaders talking about the legacy of the civil rights movement. And I could kick myself to this day because I sat there and waited for everybody. Dorothy Height was the only one, Mrs. Height was the only one that actually mentioned the gay. One of the legacies of the civil rights struggle was the gay liberation movement. I remember being a member of at the university, being a member of the Third World Corridor. This is something that the black students in response to what had happened in Ithaca a year or so before, black students demanded. Cornell. Yeah. They demanded they have their own living facilities that were going to represent their demographic. Black and Hispanic kids wanted to live together in their own dorm. When I come with my experience of being from upstate New York in this German-Italian community, I wanted authenticity, and so I insisted that I live there as well. But I wanted to do it on my terms. So I was seeing young white women at that time, and then lo and behold, the smoke clears and there's this young white man. And there was in one of the weekly dances in the black dorms, there was there was a dance, and I went to the dance. I didn't normally, my music was different than that. I wasn't listening to Al Green at that time. I love him, but I wasn't. I was listening to Jimi Hendrix. But Arnie Zane and I went. And now, was this a political statement? There came the slow dance. The slow dance. In the whole room, you know, how folks. So I took him by the hand and we went on the floor. You could literally hear the gasp, you know? Now, what did it mean? What did that gesture mean? Why were you, as my detractors have said, why were you rubbing our face in it? I didn't know I was rubbing my face in it. I thought, you know, hey, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last, cuts all sorts of directions. Plus, you are not your body, you are not your parents' chains, the future is yours. And what could be, and there's only one great common denominator in all of humanity, and that is the capacity to love. And if this is true, it doesn't matter who is doing it. Oh, this is all sounds pretty good in the mouth of a 60-year-old man, but at that time it was sort of in the background noise that the culture, everything you and I have been talking about had given me this moment. And so we danced together, and the world changed. Suddenly you were out, and not only were you queer, faggot, whatever, but you're also with white boys. So what did that relationship mean? That's where it started. Right. Now after that it was, no, this is not, as Toni Morrison said to me, in America there's a lot of what we call sexuality is actually kind of acting out. There was maybe some of that, but immediately we knew what the deal was. You have a partner. His parents had been together. At the time of his father's death, over 40 years. My mother and father died my father died when my mother and he had been together at least 40-some years. We knew couples. And we thought that was ours as well, and we went for it. That was because of him, homemaker. For an effeminate man, he was extremely macho. He knew where his home was, this, and this, and he wanted, and I was part of that. We began to build a life together. We always insisted that we never hide who we were. And that was tough, going into black situations, into my family. It was also very difficult getting invited to Passover dinner at his house. It caused literally a fight in the streets of Maspeth, Queens. It took us to the police station. Oh, we knew this was not neutral. This is not just Romeo and Juliet. No, 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 no. Every time you walk down the street together, every time you applied for an apartment, every time you go into a restaurant, there was a negotiation happening. And you had to oftentimes stare somebody down. But what gave us the strength to do it? I don't know, was it the times? You know, got a revolution, want the revolution. What is that? Is that the Jefferson Airplane? Revolution. It's easy to sing about it, but we knew what it felt like. Yeah.
Now, he encouraged you to develop the dance company, did he not?
He encouraged me to be a professional dancer, artist. And he wanted to be with me, therefore he came along, and the form that we were involved in, a certain type of avant-garde, democratized dancing, could allow a person who had very little official training to be making work and getting serious consideration. Yes, that's what we were doing.
Yeah, so as I said, he's not a dancer. And you're a dancer, and you know you're going to be a dancer.
I had taken more classes in college, just put it that way.
Okay.
I consider myself a self-taught dancer.
All right.
But yes, for the sake of our discussion, we'd say he wasn't. But now we both, by 1982, were a name, Bill T. Jones, Arnie Zane. We were a choreographic couple. So he obviously became a dancer. But this segues into how the form was changing. It had the values of music. It had the values of visual arts. Maybe before it had the values of what Mr. Balanchine would have understood as being concert dance values, or Mr. Ailey even. Because we were actually doing things like making stage pictures, mimicking film, you know, what is the accumulation? What is a retrograde? How do you make everyday movement heightened? How do you take heightened movement and make it everyday? Those were the sort of questions that we had, and they were not, so when you say, was he a dancer, which meant was he a svelte technician? No, neither one of us were. But those were not the values of the dance world that we were a member of. The values that I suppose it allows me to be here at the University of Virginia doing a piece called 100 Migrations with people, any and all comers. Anybody who comes, they can be part of this. You call that dancing? What are you doing? You're marching about, you're doing gestures, you're organizing space. Well, quite frankly, yes, we do call it dancing. Dancing is the movement of people and things in space and time, my definition. Choreography is the discovery and or generation and organization of dance materials. Balanchine choreographed for elephants in the circus. I could choreograph everybody in this room. You and I could do a dance, the way we switched the chairs. All of those are values that came out of the avant-garde in the 1960s, the place that opened the door for me and for Arnie Zane to call ourselves dancers.
You know, your life is so fascinating. I have to try hard to get back to my script here. What do you see as the difference between vision, philosophy, and style? How do these interact for you, if they do? Vision, philosophy, style.
I'm now the executive artistic director of an exciting new entity called New York Live Arts, which is the blending of a historic downtown avant-garde dance facility called the Dance Theater Workshop and my company. One of the things we're wrestling with right now is what is vision? Is vision a mission statement? Now, vision it's something like, I see it like a philosophy of life, something that you think your enterprise is devoted to no matter what changes around it. That is, you might say, we believe that the body in American society has always been beleaguered. You can blame it on our Puritan underpinnings, that there's been this body-mind dichotomy that dance has bravely, at least since the turn of the last century, been trying to confront. The body is all right with its appetites and desires. It does not have to be policed. And what's more, when it is set free, it is a beautiful thing that is good for all people watching that body. That is a vision. Now, your second one was,
Vision, philosophy, and style.
well, I think maybe its philosophy is the same. We are not afraid. We are not afraid of bodies. We are not afraid of bodies who look differently than we do, have different genders, different histories. That philosophy, and that there is beauty when those bodies can take their differences and negotiate them. Negotiating difference is a very important part of our philosophy, and place it at the service of something else. Now, what is that something else? It comes back to the humanist underpinnings of our whole conversation today. How do I, let's say I'm a body, a dancer, how do I negotiate the feeling of alienation I've had since I was sucking at my mother's breast? How can I feel a part of this world? Alienation is a very important attribute of many artists. And I think you can see it throughout history, but particularly modernist artists. The alienated lone genius is the central image. I love that. You know, the idea of Picasso saying, I don't search, I find. Jackson Pollock throwing paint, Martha Graham, Merce Cunningham, Mr. Daly himself, you know, dealing with his mother and the idea that he wanted to do dancing. I feel like that has been with me always, and I think it is something that actually is very important for the culture, that those lonely, alienated persons be allowed to look for bridges to the culture. It's counterintuitive, isn't it? If you define yourself as being apart, but by the same token, you want to be one with. That is the push and pull of my philosophy. And what was the third?
Style.
Style. Merce Cunningham says style is repetition. Now that's very, very kind of with tongue-in-cheek almost. Well, I think he's not far off. Style is attention to certain details that are repeated in some sort of orderly, maybe even scientific way, as a kind of an infrastructure for expression and feeling. We move our arms in this way. These are our subject matters. This is the type of music. This is the formal relationship to a public. These are all stylistic elements. We say that we don't teach a technique in my company. I have a wonderful collaborator, Janet Wong, who is my associate artistic director. She's a brilliant teacher, classically trained, and yet with the kind of intelligent mind of the best of contemporary modern dance. But we say we don't teach a technique like Martha Graham, Merce Cunningham, or Cicchetti Ballet. We teach style, which is in some ways a group of questions. How do we solve the problem of making a piece, for instance, like the one that you saw, Blind Date? We want to talk about the same thing the whole country is talking about, what seemed to be a collision course between our Enlightenment ideals and our present legislative and political practice, full of doublespeak, full of lobbying, full of infighting, and yet everyone waves the flag of being about liberty, tolerance, progress. And we said that our ideals and our practice are in a collision course, which could be, prosaically put, like a blind date, where it could end up being something new is born, or it could end up people kill each other in the backseat of a car. That's what Blind Date was. That was a stylistic choice to use that kind of raucous, incoherent stage with lots of non sequiturs and someone singing at a James's security, talk about faux McDonald's as a Quackadeck burgers, films that have images of Paris Hilton eating a hamburger, all territory that is disorienting, but that was the style of the piece. The disorientation was the style of the piece. But it ends with me singing a song that Estella Jones taught me, very old in life. Walk with me, Lord, walk with me. Walk with me, Lord, walk with me, while I'm on this tedious journey. Stay with me, Lord, stay with me. So how can you go from this messy canvas to that very sentimental, old-fashioned cry? And I'm not a religious person. When I say Lord, I don't know who I'm talking to. But when she said, while I'm on this tedious journey, tedious, it's so, and here she's sitting diminished. It's a woman who had 14 children, who was a hellcat, who raised hell in the school, is now sitting with me, and I asked her to sing a song, and she sings that song. And that comes at the end of my work. That was a stylistic choice.
Did you ever think of being a singer?
Thought of it, but as Miss Jessie Norman told me when we were doing How Do We Do, she said, there will be no vernacular on this stage. Because that's what I sing the vernacular.
Back to vision. Has your vision changed over time?
You mean like today?
Or yesterday, or
No,
maybe tomorrow?
No, good question. Thank you for that. You know what, there's something about, there's no rule book. How do they teach a young, self-involved, body-oriented maverick how to be middle-aged, how to have knees that are bad, how to have white hair, the planes of the face are chiseled in ways that I would not have it. I want the smooth face of a 20-year-old or 30-year-old. How to, and that the body has been the sole entree into all sorts of situations, problematic for black men, if you can understand. The body is changing. The card, your calling card. Yeah, talk about vision changing. Make room for younger bodies. Be a more articulate, explaining things which used to be only feeling state. Oh, it's changing.
Yeah. Let me characterize the making of leaders in 3 ways. A, great people cause great events. B, movements make leaders. Or C, the confluence of unpredictable events creates leaders appropriate for the times. Which of these was your path to leadership, A, B, or C?
The last one.
The latter. So the confluence of unpredictable events created you appropriate for your times.
Okay, I was, actually enough, I wasn't even thinking about myself. I was thinking of who I think great leaders are. I see myself as maybe an influential maker, but I don't know if I've been a leader. Abraham Lincoln, Mr. Obama, other people like
Yes, but in this kind of, you're a leader, and
okay.
you think your leadership role in the position you presently occupy now is a confluence of events, various things which occurred in your life and made you who you are now.
And I appreciate this question. It's a somewhat embarrassing question because one could easily step into all sorts of caca around it. Let me give an example. I think that we couldn't underestimate the weight of the AIDS epidemic on the way my narrative has found its place in the culture. For good or for bad, Arnie Zane and I being 2 of the first persons publicly to go forward his HIV on McNeil Lehrer report. If any of your listeners want to look it up, it was about he died in 88, this might have been in 86 or 87, and he was public at a time when people were hiding it like crazy. I came out as HIV positive after he died. Maybe I was tricked out by a writer from The Advocate, a gay paper, who asked me, and I casually mentioned it, and he published it the first line. Suddenly it was out. But I made a work called Still Here because of the feeling of Arnie's death and what I assumed would be my death. It didn't happen that way. I was moved to make a work that tried to be some sort of great culmination, some summation statement about mortality. And then I did a very big work that got all sorts of attention. We're talking like the front pages of papers. It had people fighting about victim art and what things are appropriate. Now, my personal story and a time that was freaked out about the plague. I remember getting calls 2 years before that from major publications wanting me to talk about it, and I refused. Once I did talk about it, suddenly all of this attention came on me, came on that work. That work is considered a seminal work in the development of American dance, and I think it should be. Now, does that make me a great leader? That makes me a person who actually had something coming at them. They moved toward it, they did the best that they could do, And the rest is done by the culture. So that's how I answer that question. Not to be in any way disingenuously self-effacing, because I'm certainly not. But I have enough smarts to know that sometimes it is literally the way the wind is blowing and how it catches your sails. Heroes, the same idea. People who have performed heroically, you ask them later, well, what would they say? Well, you know, I just did what I thought it had to do at that moment. That's my understanding of circumstance and leadership in some degree. Let's hope our leaders are well prepared. Yes, I could speak the King's English. Yes, I have the twin ballast of a serious understanding of 20th century modernism, and my mother can sing a spiritual and can break your heart. So I think I know what those ingredients I put together regularly.
And you have all the ingredients.
I have the ingredient. In other words, you might say I'm prepared enough for what comes down the pike.
Now, do you see your legitimacy as a leader grounded in your ability to persuade people to follow your vision, or in your ability to articulate the agenda of a movement?
Oh, well, you honor me with these questions. You know?
No.
Would you say it one more time?
Do you see your legitimacy as a leader grounded in your ability to persuade people to follow your vision, or in your ability to articulate an agenda of a movement?
Well, the second half of that, I tried to...
The agenda of a movement.
Yeah, I tried to say that Arnie Zane and I were following the blueprint of the 1960s. In other words, I am not my body. Any distinctions between people because of race are illusory. Right. Anyone, if they work hard enough, can be the president. All of these things we were taught, you know, that free at last, freedom, right? So now, is that the agenda, quote? The first part about that, this is what's really tricky when you have a performing artist sitting in front of you. We spend so much time trying to figure out how to get people to come and see what we do. Is that called following? Is that the same thing?
They come.
They come, but you got to work at it. Audience development never ends. Why am I not like a humble saint? Why am I not like Gandhi? I just do what I do quietly, and then they will all just find their way into a theater and see it. No, self-promotion is a big part of the job description. That's why I say you honor me with these questions that you might ask to a Desmond Tutu or somebody like that, or some of the other august persons you've had, because we're artists, we're making it up. And we're not balanced people. And most of us are incredibly self-involved, self-absorbed. Literally, that is the fuel that we burn.
But people come.
People do come.
And it isn't all development.
It isn't all self-promotion, you mean, or audience development?
No, yes, that the people come. It's not all that you have engaged in.
No. I've been part of a discourse in as much from what I have said and done as how what I have said and done has been used by a discourse. And that is something to consider. You maybe, like when we make a work, we say it's like giving birth to a child. Will that child go on to find a cure for cancer or AIDS, or will that child end up as a mass murderer? You don't know when you let them out of your house, do you? Yeah. A work almost has that. Same potential. It can be used by the world. It can be ignored by the world. It's a crapshoot, unless you get to a certain level and you have this organ, which is called your marketing machine, your public relations machine, that is relentlessly positioning the work. It's not clean business. It's not clean. The person that starts the work, the person that's trying to sit here with you, is trying to speak honestly. But it's not, I can't give answers that are going to, designed to be put in marble on the Bill T. Jones Memorial someday, right? Yeah, they're often really ambivalent. They're oftentimes self-effacing or benighted in terms of self.
But on the Bill T. Jones Memorial, it won't just say he danced. It say
He thought.
he stood up for marriage equality. He supported the NAACP in its boycott of South Carolina. He did this, he did that, he did this. There's more to it than
Thank you for reminding me of that. The other voice is one that sometimes is so much in the moment.
Well, I don't want to deprecate the dance. The dance is who you are, what you are, and it's why people come to see you.
Art making.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Art
'cause
making.
I'm a retired dancer, and when you look at my stage, the purists would hardly say it's dance. It's
I wish
going
I'd
on.
been in the theater when you jumped on the stage in Fela and danced with the dancers there. My wife and I are so angry that we, by luck, did not go to the
didn't see
theater
that
that
night?
night. No.
Well, I say right now, I dance when I'm happy.
Yeah.
As my mother says, I dance when child, you got to get out of self, she says. Get out of self. And the Greeks call it ecstasis. That you got to, when the spirit is in the room, when the God comes into the room, be ready, you know, because that's the dance that only happens at one time, at one night. Yeah, and that happens a few times, and I'm happy.
Do you have a philosophy that guides you through life? Has it sustained you through challenges or moments of alienation? Does that philosophy stick with you always?
Well, yeah. Strange at these moments, and maybe you have it as well. It's the old people. It says, I want to be ready. I want to be ready, ready to put on a long white robe. What does that mean, I want to be ready? I want to be ready for you, the man who I've grown up respecting. And now you're asking me, sitting here with me and asking me these questions. I want to be ready for my company this afternoon. I want to be ready for my death. Because I dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
I'm in love again. I want to be ready for his death. I have nieces and nephews who are living in poverty that I thought we would never see again. I want to be ready to be their uncle, the one that has gotten the Kennedy Center Award, the one that says to them, you don't have to live like this. How do I do it? How do we do it without being a real oppressive force, blaming them for circumstances? No, generosity of heart. I want to be ready.
I think you're ready. Let me shift gears here. How does race consciousness affect your work? Do you see yourself as a leader who advances issues of race or issues of society, or are these the same thing for you? Or is there a distinction?
I think they're the same thing, although maybe different makeups, right? It was very important. They used to ask the question in the dance world, in the art world maybe, dance world in particular, what is black dance? And I used to say, and I remember causing quite a kerfuffle once, one morning in a program called The Future of Black Dance, when I said I was an artist first and then black. And the room exploded.
I'm sure.
They went, how dare you? Wait a minute, I was saying that, I was thinking of Proust, hearing your collaborator read about what the great Amiri Baraka was saying about reading the modernists of James Joyce and others. I said that Proust, I want to make dance like Proust. He wrote pages about the space between two clouds. That's what I thought. Oh, isn't that what we're all here for? It's about transcendence. But no. You have an obligation. And so I said, okay, many people think that black dance is dance about the trauma narrative of being black in America. And I say, no, black dance is anything a person who defines himself as black chooses to make and call it dance. That's black dance. That's where I'm at right now, quite frankly. And I'm quite proud to be, for instance, at the Kennedy Center a few years ago, there was Masters of African American Dance. I didn't want to be on that program. I'd go there on my own. Suddenly I've got to be now black African American dance. I make dance in America. But you know what now? I think it's just like I get Fela. I know about Fela's music, that it comes in through your ears, but you hear it first in your hips. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. I'm just meeting with a major rapper the other day. And these guys, lots of money. I won't mention his name, but everyone knows who he is. And He's now wants to do this thing, and he wants to do everything, and he wants to do it all now, and he has the money to do it.
Yeah.
And I keep going, whoa, 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 slow down. What is the story, you know? But no, well, why would he slow down? What was it? Who was it said that time? Was it Tony who said we were the original postmoderns? African Americans have always taken what's there in terms of language or style, and mash them up, and then make something out of it. Unfortunately, they move on, and others make the money from it. But maybe that's changed now. But look at tap dancing. What was that?
Yeah.
African polyrhythms meets European, or let's say Irish step dancing, clog dancing in America, and we make a form that changed the face of theatrical dance around the world.
And to you, that's not black dancing.
Well, I'm proud of the black DNA in it. I'm very proud of it, but now it's certainly world dancing, isn't it?
Yes.
Have you listened to American Idol lately? I don't do it very much, but I say to someone, now everybody is down. Everybody can sound like Aretha.
Yes.
They've studied it. You know how to bend those notes, you know how the melismas, you know how to soar like that. Is that a black sound now? You tell me, when you listen to someone on the television or on the phone, used to be a time you could tell 3 words if they were black.
Yes.
Can you anymore?
No, you can't now.
No, you can't. Should I bemoan that? Hey, evolution now. Everything truly free at last, thank God Almighty. We're now grown into each other's world culture, and your DNA is proudly in there. So just settle with that. You don't have to stay segregated anymore.
You make me think about the last 2 Broadway shows, or the last 2 shows my wife and I saw. We saw the one about the 4 Seasons,
What about the Fort?
Jersey Boys.
Jersey Boys. Yeah. I'm
love
thinking of the Temptations. Sorry,
Yeah.
Jersey Boys.
Well, and then we saw the Temptations. And I've loved the Temptations all my life. And that style of dancing they do. And that strikes me as
you know, there was a choreographer, you know.
Oh, yeah, Charlie Atkins?
Yes.
Yeah, I met Charlie Atkins once.
See, and I never knew. We grew up thinking that the performers made the steps.
Yes, I did too.
But anyways, I'm sorry, interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But anyway, which is it? The Jersey Boys? Is that black dance? Are they doing black dance? They're certainly not black.
No, they're
These are
not.
Italian boys.
They're not, are they?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. You mean that kind of little hip switch they do and they synchronize. Where did that come from? You know, maybe here at this great university, the historians, the social historians would tell us, but I would think that came from everybody watching black people move.
Yeah.
Remember that, what was Bing Crosby, The Birth of the Blues or something?
Yeah.
It was so, bless him, but remember the storyline was he was this prodigy of a singer who was down in the levee teaching the black people how to sing.
Right.
Right? He was teaching them how to like harmonize and, you know, and he invented the blues, right? Well, we don't need to go to those things anymore, do we? You know how much pain there is about who owns what? You know, now maybe if your question is about what is authentic to an African American experience and what's my relationship to it, I'm still trying to understand that.
No, that wasn't the question. That wasn't the question. But is there such a thing as a race transcending leader, someone who transcends race?
And you know, I translate this into music, into theater,
Right.
Or into, theater dance terms. Yes, of course there are. There are. What was Michael Jackson? Troubling personality, but a genius.
Yeah.
And I think Michael Jackson, he had a solid sense of himself as an African American, but he saw himself in the class with people who were these, how do people say it, strange hothouse plants, like Elizabeth Taylor, like name your biggest stars. He saw himself as one of them. There was a whole other sphere that he belonged to, which in a way helped him be able to be a beacon of certain type of creativity and integration for many, many people. So yeah, he did. Odd choice, isn't it? Because his life was so painful and weird, but that's okay. That's what goes into being a leader, I think. Leaders are a bit distorted. What was Bayard Rustin? Let's talk about Bayard Rustin. There was another thing around that table that night, the Smithsonian. Bayard Rustin never came up. Right? Now, this was a man who was extremely cosmopolitan.
Well, who was around the table? Maybe Ms. Height was the only person who knew Bayard Rustin.
Well, did John Lewis know him?
Yes, John knew him.
Yes, Wilkerson, Roy Wilkerson.
Roy Wilkins knew him and
Yes.
was mad at him all the time.
More than mad at him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nasty stuff.
Nasty
No, there were everybody around that table.
Okay.
There was something being policed around what we can allow into the wake of our great civil rights struggle. And I feel like I was there to do that, but I was afraid I would be predictable if I started taking off the shoe and hitting it around this issue. So I was going to behave, first of all, with humility toward my elders. And with the idea that, give them the benefit of the doubt, they all know that the women's movement, the gay movement, all of those were very, very much influenced by the success of the civil rights movement, which civil rights was supposedly not only about black people, was it?
Right.
It was about human rights, right? But we know it really meant black rights, right? And I was sitting there waiting for that to happen, and I think it was cowardly. I think that was kind of, I'm not proud of that moment. I'm not proud of it. I wanted somebody else to bring it up, to say it, but nobody did except for Dorothy Height. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if I know really why that would have occurred. It could be that Bayard is at a lower level in leadership than these people gathered around the table.
Why was he at a lower level?
I don't mean because he was not the great speech maker like King. He wasn't the leader of any great movement or organization like Roy Wilkins was, or Dorothy Height was. So he was a lesser figure. I don't mean a lesser person.
I don't know if you've seen, but I recommend it to you and any of the people listening to this, Brother Outside.
Oh yes, I've seen it.
Yeah. Well, my understanding was this is the man that was lecturing Martin Luther King
Oh, absolutely.
about nonviolence.
He taught King about nonviolence. He said King couldn't organize vampires to go to a bloodbath.
Well, but my point is, I thought that the man, because of his troubling identity, could not be in the upper echelon.
Yes, that's true.
You know, so it's not that he was just somehow was not, but it was stacked against him. And he was a good player. He was a good guy.
Yes, a very
He
good
thought
guy.
the mission was more important than him, and I wish that he had been a little bit more not even about self,
Less self-effacing.
less self,
And less willing to take a back seat.
yes, forced. But the quote, the movement wasn't ready to have this discussion.
Yeah. No, it wasn't ready. It's not really ready now.
Amen.
Yeah. But anyway, some try to make it ready. Do you have a different leadership style when you talk to groups that are all black, mixed race, or all white? Are you a different person before these different groups?
Yes, I am. I am. I don't have occasion to speak to all black groups a lot. I go to universities like the University of Virginia here. I have, it's a great honor to meet you, but is there a Black Students Association?
Yes.
Have I met them? No. And why is that? Because I come in through one particular, the people, Beth Turner, George Sampson, people brought me in, their focus is the cultural sphere, and they're trying to do a certain thing over here. I have to work to be on the radar of the young black students.
These places are very segregated, not by race as much as by discipline, so that the people in Department A may not know people in Department B or C. And it's one of the tragedies, I think, of the modern university. It's a discussion we don't need to go into right now.
Yeah, but you asked though, and so yes, when I'm working on Fela and the cast is primarily black people, and we're working with black artists, there is a certain kind of language, unspoken things are expressed, sort of things happen. When I'm working with my company that is multiracial, but working in the idiom of modern dance, which, whatever you want to think about, I think it's still seen as white dance. There is another kind of way that one must speak, and there's nothing like being invited to talk about Lincoln at the New York Historical Society. And that room, when I looked at A Good Man the other night, and I hope you have a chance to see this, and this room is full of, I'll say it, Republicans, you know? And they were just doing, somebody twisted their arms, or they were doing some political correct thing to have me up there, but there was, it was not, the spirit, quote, was not in the room. There was an iciness. But it makes me do what? First of all, there is the this one, which means I have no weapon. You know, you know how black men have to learn how to do that.
yeah.
You know, or there is the smile that is, this is designed to disarm you. No, I am not angry at you. And what's more, I am actually, I'm not going to embarrass you, right? As a matter of fact, I will even flatter you that you've been so kind as to invite me. You know, this is all kind of painful parody of, you talk about the different ways that you speak, yeah? I guess the middle one is supposed to be the world that it came from. That was the world of the multiracial, alienated artist class. And we can all speak from our dissatisfaction, our locations of dissatisfaction, and we can all skirt the issues like race and so on. Maybe not gender anymore, but because we're on another level of discourse about meaning.
Do you think that black leaders have an obligation to other black Americans? Is there a point at which that obligation ends, if you do think that, and one can pursue his or her own ambitions?
One more time, please.
Do you think that black leaders have an obligation to help other black Americans? Because you're black, do you have an obligation to?
Well, I can't say what anyone has an obligation to. I've broken so many rules of obligation. I am trying to, you know, a few years ago, I was bemoaning the fact that somebody who I respect, like James Levine, would accept a medal or an honor from Ronald Reagan. And I said that, here, I became strident. I said, look, he's famous enough as an artist. He has enough cachet that he could turn this award down and write a New York Times article, a feature saying why he did it, and he could make the voice of an artist actually having some political clout. I said that. No, I have no right to say that about him. He is a wonderful artist. And his feeling is, my art transcends. My art does not want to fight these battles. It's for all the ages. Maybe that's what he would say.
And maybe he's saying, I'm not taking this from Ronald Reagan, I'm taking it from the president.
Okay, right. And can he make that?
I'm not sure.
Yes, I mean, you don't believe it either. But I was lucky enough to be given the honor during the age of Mr. Obama, right? Would I have taken it from, no one offered it to me during Richard Nixon or Ronald Reagan. Would I have taken it? I don't know, if you're hungry enough as an artist, you will. Now you're saying black leaders now.
Yeah. Yes, and we're putting you in this category, however you resisted.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, this idea of, well, I've lost the sense of the question because I'm trying to make it.
Do you have an obligation to help other African Americans? And is there a point where that obligation ends, that you no longer have to meet that obligation, if you think you do?
Well, what is help? Do I have an obligation?
Uplift, pay attention to, listen to.
Well, I start with my family.
Yeah.
I start with my family. Those young nieces and nephews I'm talking about, whose mother died of cancer, who at age 18 are now left with a mortgage, a leaking roof, and they've got to educate themselves, and they've done it. They pulled together on a busboy's salary. The oldest son is actually leave school and is raising his brothers and sisters. Yeah, and for me to actually find a way to talk to them and ask, what do you need? I'm not unlimitedly wealthy, but I can give a little bit, I can give money. And what's more, here is an older person who's listening to you and asking you, what are your plans? That's how I do it. Yeah. Take care, clean up around your own door first. When I'm speaking in a forum like this, to try to speak candidly about what I find I share with this notion of what a black American is and how I diverge. And I hope that the ears are there to hear that black people we can be in disagreement. I think that helps black people.
Well, it helps us. Thank you, Bill Jones, for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. It's a pleasure.